I sat at my grandfather's mahogany dining table clutching a folded check for $210, while the aroma of roasted turkey filled his cozy suburban home. The money would cover my rent for another month, and I felt genuinely grateful for Harold's generosity during my latest financial struggle as a freelance graphic designer. As he carved the golden bird with practiced precision, I cleared my throat and spoke from the heart about how much his help meant to me. Harold suddenly froze mid-slice, the silver carving knife suspended above the steaming turkey, and fixed me with an intense stare that made my stomach drop. With deliberate care, he set down the knife and delivered words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. The gift I wired you was $500,000. The next morning, I sat in my cramped studio apartment staring at my laptop screen, a cup of cold coffee growing bitter beside my keyboard. My fingers hovered over the phone, dreading the call I needed to make. The walls of my apartment seemed to close in around me as the magnitude of the situation settled into my consciousness. I dialed Fifth Third Bank's customer service line, navigating through 4 automated menu options before reaching a human representative. The hold music played for 11 minutes, each passing second, amplifying my anxiety. "Good morning, this is Jessica speaking. How can I assist you today, East?" Jessica sounded young and professionally cheerful, probably working her first banking job out of college. I took a deep breath and explained my situation as clearly as possible. A wire transfer that should have been $500,000, but appeared as $210. She asked for my account number, social security number, and mother's maiden name. "Let me pull up your account history, Mr. Patterson. Please hold for just a moment." The hold music resumed. I paced around my small living space, stepping over design portfolios scattered across the hardwood floor. My freelance business operated from this single room with a desktop computer scanner and printer occupying most of the available space. Rent was $850 monthly, and I had been behind on payments twice this year. "Mr. Patterson, I see the transaction you're referring to. On November 20th, a wire transfer for $500,000 was received into your checking account. However, the same day, an electronic transfer for $499,790 was immediately sent out to an external account." My knees went weak. What external account? I never authorized any transfer. "The receiving account appears to be registered under your name and social security number at Huntington Bank. The transfer was processed using your online banking credentials with proper 2-factor authentication." That's impossible. I don't have an account at Huntington Bank. I've never even been inside a Huntington branch. Jessica's tone became more cautious. "Mr. Patterson, I need to transfer you to our fraud investigation department. This situation requires immediate attention." 20 minutes later, I was connected with Detective Financial Specialist Robert Chen. Despite his professional demeanor, I could hear concern in his voice as he reviewed my account activity. "Mr. Patterson, what I'm seeing here is extremely sophisticated. The electronic transfer was initiated using legitimate banking protocols. Someone had access to your online banking username, password, and phone for 2-factor authentication. But more concerning is what I'm discovering in your transaction history." "What do you mean?" "Over the past 3 years, you've had numerous electronic transfers exit your account immediately after deposits arrived. Payments from graphic design clients, freelance platforms, even small amounts like $50 or $60. Each time money came in, a portion was automatically transferred out within hours." I sank into my desk chair, struggling to process this information. "How much money are we talking about?" "Preliminary calculation shows approximately $37,000 over the past 36 months. Someone has been systematically skimming your income." The room began spinning. $37,000 plus the $499,000 from Harold's gift. Over $500,000 stolen from me. No wonder I had been struggling financially, working 60-hour weeks just to afford basic necessities. "How is this even possible?" I asked. someone with sophisticated knowledge of banking systems and access to your personal information. They established mirror accounts using your identity, then programmed automatic transfers to activate whenever deposits exceeded certain thresholds. It's professional-level financial fraud. I spent the next hour providing detailed information to Detective Chen. Every client payment, every financial transaction, every password I could remember. He guided me through securing my accounts, changing passwords, and implementing additional security measures. When I finally hung up, my apartment felt different. Violated. Someone had been watching my finances for years, stealing money that should have lifted me out of poverty. The $210 Harold gave me represented the leftover crumbs after the thieves took their cut. I called Harold immediately. His voice sounded grim but determined. "Marcus, this is bigger than just your money. If someone can do this to you, they might be targeting other family members. We need to warn everyone and figure out how they got access to such detailed information about our family." That afternoon, Harold arrived at my apartment carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the same serious expression he used to wear during important business meetings. He spread documents across my small kitchen table and pulled out a yellow legal pad. "I've been thinking about this all morning," he said. "Whoever did this knows intimate details about our family finances. They knew I was planning to give you money. They knew the exact amount. They were prepared to intercept it immediately. You think it's someone we know?" Harold nodded grimly. "Someone close enough to know about Eugene's estate and my plans for the inheritance? Someone who understands banking systems well enough to set up this elaborate scheme." My phone buzzed with a text message from my younger brother, Danny. "Hey man, heard from Mom about some money stuff with Grandpa. Everything okay? Call me." Harold noticed my expression. "What is it?" "Text from Danny. Mom must have told him about yesterday's dinner conversation." "Marcus, I want you to be very careful about what you share with anyone right now. Until we know how this information leaked, we can't trust that it won't happen again." I stared at my brother's message, a cold realization settling in my stomach. Danny worked in customer service for a regional credit union. He understood banking procedures. He had helped me set up my online banking 3 years ago when I switched to Fifth Third Bank. 3 years ago, exactly when the systematic theft began. Harold and I spent the next 2 days conducting our own investigation. He approached the situation with the methodical precision of a trained insurance investigator, creating timelines and tracking every possible connection. We discovered that the Huntington Bank account had been opened using my social security number and a fake driver's license with my name but someone else's photograph. The address listed on the fraudulent account belonged to a luxury apartment complex in Dublin, Ohio, 20 minutes north of Columbus. Harold drove us there in his Ford sedan, both of us wearing baseball caps and sunglasses like amateur detectives. The complex featured manicured lawns, a swimming pool, and monthly rents starting at $2,000, far beyond what someone could afford on a credit union customer service salary. "That's Brian's car," I said, pointing to a silver BMW sedan in the parking lot. Brian Patterson was my cousin Uncle Robert's son, 2 years older than me. We'd grown up together, spent countless summers at Harold's house, shared bedrooms during family vacations. Brian worked as a loan officer at Citywide Credit Union, downtown handling business accounts and electronic transfers. Harold's face went pale. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. He bought that car last year and wouldn't stop talking about the premium sound system and leather seats." We parked across the street and waited. 43 minutes later, Brian emerged from Building C carrying a gym bag and wearing expensive athletic clothing. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man without financial worries. My phone rang. Brian's name appeared on the caller ID. "Answer it," Harold whispered. "Act normal." "Hey Brian, what's up?" "Marcus, dude, I heard from my dad that you had some weird situation at Thanksgiving dinner. Something about Grandpa Harold and money confusion." I met Harold's eyes. "Yeah, just some banking mix-up, nothing major." "Cool, cool. Listen, if you need help sorting out any banking stuff, you know I work with electronic transfers every day. I could probably figure out what happened and get it fixed for you. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. For sure. Family takes care of family, right? Hey, I'm heading to the gym, but let's grab lunch this week and catch up properly. After Brian drove away, Harold and I sat in silence for several minutes. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Brian had access to banking systems, intimate knowledge of family finances, and clearly more money than his legitimate job could provide. We need proof, Harold said finally. Accusations without evidence will just destroy our family relationships. That evening, I called Detective Chen and shared our suspicions. He agreed to expand the investigation to include Brian, but warned that financial fraud cases moved slowly through proper legal channels. In the meantime, Chen said, be extremely careful about what information you share. If your cousin is involved, he's likely monitoring family communications to stay ahead of any investigations. The next morning, I decided to visit Brian at his office. Citywide Credit Union occupied the ground floor of a downtown office building, with Brian's desk positioned near the back corner. He looked up as I approached his face, breaking into a wide smile. Marcus, what brings you downtown? Brian had always been the golden child of our extended family. Straight-A student, college graduate, steady job, clean-cut appearance. At 30, he stood 6 feet tall with brown hair, green eyes, and the kind of confident demeanor that made people trust him immediately. I wanted to take you up on that offer to help with my banking situation, I said, sitting in the chair across from his desk. Absolutely, tell me what's going on. I explained the situation carefully, watching his reactions. Brian listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and offered to contact Fifth Third Bank on my behalf to request detailed transaction records. This definitely sounds like identity theft, he said. Someone got access to your personal information and set up mirror accounts. It's more common than you'd think. I see cases like this probably once a month. Really that often? Oh yeah. Usually it's someone close to the victim. Family member, roommate, coworker. Someone who has physical access to mail documents' personal information. Brian's computer monitor faced away from me, but I could see his fingers moving across the keyboard while we talked. Whatever he was typing had nothing to do with helping me. The good news is that banks are pretty good about recovering stolen funds once fraud is proven, Brian continued. You'll probably get most of your money back eventually. Most of it? Well, there are always fees and complications. But you should recover at least 60 or 70%. Harold had warned me that Brian might try to lower my expectations about recovering the stolen money. If Brian was indeed the thief, he would want me to believe that significant losses were inevitable. Brian, can I ask you something personal? How do you afford that BMW and the apartment in Dublin on a credit union salary? His expression shifted slightly. The confident smile remained, but something changed behind his eyes. I do some consulting work on the side. Help small businesses set up their banking systems, electronic payroll, that kind of thing. It pays pretty well. That's smart. Who do you consult for? Various companies, mostly local stuff. Nothing too exciting. Brian's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it quickly, then looked back at me with renewed intensity. Marcus, I need to ask you something important. Have you told anyone else about this banking situation? Besides family? Just the fraud investigator at Fifth Third Bank. Good. That's good. You want to keep this quiet until it's resolved. Sometimes these criminals monitor police communications and bank investigations. If they know you're onto them, they might disappear with your money permanently. I nodded, but alarm bells were ringing in my head. Brian seemed very concerned about who else knew about the investigation. I should probably get going, I said, standing up. Thanks for offering to help. Of course, family takes care of family. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Brian's phone ring. He answered quickly, speaking in hushed tones. I couldn't make out the words, but his voice carried an urgency that hadn't been there during our conversation. Outside the credit union, I called Harold from my car. He's involved, I said. I'm certain of it. What did you learn? He's more worried about who else knows about the investigation than he is about helping me recover the money. And he kept emphasizing that I might not get all of it back. We need to be very careful now, Marcus. If Brian realizes we suspect him, he might destroy evidence or transfer the stolen money somewhere we can't recover it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my studio apartment. Brian had been at every family gathering for the past 3 years. He knew about Harold's financial situation, my freelance struggles, even the intimate details of our family relationships. How long had he been planning this? How many other family members had he stolen from? And what would he do when he realized we were closing in on him? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Detective Chen called me 3 days after my visit to Brian's office, his voice tight with urgency. "Mr. Patterson, we need to meet immediately. I've discovered something that changes everything about your case." An hour later, I sat across from Chen in a small conference room at the Fifth Third Bank headquarters. Harold sat beside me, his face grave. Chen spread several documents across the table, including printed emails and bank statements. "Yesterday, we executed a search warrant on the Huntington bank account that received your stolen funds," Chen began. "What we found goes far beyond simple identity theft." He pointed to a printout showing dozens of transactions. "This account has received wire transfers from 17 different victims over the past 18 months. The total amount stolen exceeds $1.4 million. My mouth went dry. 17 victims. All elderly individuals or their family members. All living in central Ohio. All targeted after receiving substantial inheritances, insurance settlements, or other large financial windfalls." Harold leaned forward. "You're describing a criminal organization." "Exactly. We believe your cousin Brian is part of a sophisticated fraud ring that specializes in targeting families. They identify wealthy, elderly individuals, then infiltrate their social circles to gather financial information." Chen pulled out another document. "This morning, FBI agents searched Brian's apartment in Dublin. We found encrypted communications with a group calling itself Family First Financial. They operate across 6 states and have stolen an estimated $12 million over the past 5 years." The room felt cold despite the heating system running. I struggled to process the scope of what Chen was describing. "Brian isn't just a thief," Chen continued. "He's a trained operative working for professional criminals. They recruited him specifically because of his banking experience and family connections." "How did you discover all this?" Harold asked. "Brian made a crucial mistake. When you visited his office, Mr. Patterson, he immediately contacted his criminal associates to warn them that the investigation was expanding. We've been monitoring his communications for the past 48 hours. Chen opened his laptop and played an audio recording. Brian's voice was clearly recognizable. "The family is getting suspicious. The grandfather brought in investigators. We need to accelerate the timeline and extract the remaining assets before they can freeze everything." A different voice responded, older and more authoritative. "How much are we talking about?" The old man inherited $2.8 million from his brother. We've only accessed $500,000 so far. There's still over $2 million sitting in accessible accounts. Then we proceed to Phase 3. Eliminate the investigation threats and secure the full inheritance. The recording stopped. Chen's expression was grim. "Mr. Patterson, this organization doesn't just steal money. When investigations get too close, they've been known to use intimidation, blackmail, and in some cases violence to protect their operations." Harold's face had turned pale. "They're threatening our family. The FBI believes so. We've identified the leader of this organization as Vincent Romano, a former investment banker who started this fraud ring after being fired for embezzlement. He's extremely sophisticated and absolutely ruthless." Chen pulled out photographs of several men and women. "These are Romano's known associates. We believe they've been conducting surveillance on your family for months, gathering information about your routines, relationships, and financial activities." One photograph made my blood freeze. a woman with short blonde hair and green eyes, probably in her late 20s. I recognized her immediately. "That's Sarah," I said. "Brian's girlfriend. She's been to family gatherings for the past year." "Sarah Mitchell," Chen confirmed. "Real name Sarah Volkov. Professional con artist with arrests in 3 states. She's been posing as Brian's girlfriend to maintain access to your family's private conversations and financial discussions." Everything clicked into place. Sarah had been present at Christmas dinner when Harold mentioned Eugene's estate. She attended my grandmother's birthday party when family members discussed their financial plans. She had been gathering intelligence for months. "Where is Brian now?" Harold asked. "Unknown. He didn't return to work today, and his apartment appears to have been hastily vacated. We believe the organization is preparing to extract their final targets and disappear." Chen leaned forward intently. "Mr. Patterson, we need your help. The FBI wants to set up a sting operation to capture these criminals and recover the stolen funds. But it's dangerous and you'd be serving as bait." "What kind of sting operation?" "We create a fake scenario where you appear to have access to additional family money. Make it look like Harold is planning to liquidate his entire estate and transfer everything to you for safekeeping. When Romano's people attempt to intercept those funds, we capture them." Harold shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. I won't put Marcus in danger." "Mr. Patterson," Chen said, "this might be our only chance to stop these criminals before they target other families. They've already stolen millions of dollars and destroyed dozens of lives." I thought about the 17 other victims Chen had mentioned. Families who had lost their inheritances, their financial security, their trust in the people closest to them. How many elderly grandparents had died believing their grandchildren had stolen from them? How many young people like me had struggled financially, while criminals lived luxuriously off their stolen money? "I'll do it," I said quietly. "Marcus, no," Harold protested. "Grandpa, they stole $500,000 from me. They've been stealing from me for 3 years, and they're planning to steal from you next." I looked at Chen. "What do you need me to do?" Chen outlined the plan. I would use my graphic design skills to create convincing fake bank documents showing Harold liquidating his assets. We would stage phone conversations that Brian's associates could overhear discussing a $2.5 million transfer. When the criminals attempted to intercept the funds, federal agents would be waiting. "There are significant risks," Chen warned. "These people have demonstrated willingness to use violence. If they suspect a trap, they might retaliate against you or your grandfather." "What's the alternative?" I asked. "They disappear with the money they've already stolen and other families continue to be victimized." Harold studied my face for a long moment. Finally, he nodded grimly. "If we're doing this, we do it right. No half measures." Over the next 4 hours, we planned every detail of the operation. I would create fake banking documents using my professional design software. Harold would make staged phone calls from his house, knowing that the criminals were likely monitoring his communications. FBI agents would pose as bank employees to make the fake transfer appear legitimate. The plan would begin tomorrow morning. By evening, we would either have captured the criminals or put ourselves in mortal danger. As we left the bank, Harold placed his hand on my shoulder. "Marcus, I want you to know how proud I am of your courage. But if this goes wrong, if something happens to you because of my inheritance money, I'll never forgive myself." "Grandpa, this isn't about your money anymore. This is about stopping criminals who are destroying families. We have to try." That night, I worked until 3 in the morning, creating the most convincing fake bank documents of my career. Every font, every logo, every security feature had to be perfect. These criminals were sophisticated enough to spot amateur forgeries. My apartment felt exposed and vulnerable as I worked. Every sound outside made me jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. Tomorrow, I would find out whether my skills were good enough to fool professional criminals, and whether Brian, my cousin, who I had trusted my entire life, would try to have me killed to protect his criminal operation. The next morning, I met with FBI Special Agent Patricia Castellanos in an unmarked van parked behind a shopping center. Agent Castellanos was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had spent 20 years dealing with dangerous criminals. "Mr. Patterson, I need to be absolutely clear about the risks we're taking today," she said, reviewing my fake bank documents. Vincent Romano's organization has been linked to 3 cases of serious assault and 1 suspicious death. If they realize this is a sting operation, your life could be in immediate danger. I nodded, trying to project more confidence than I felt. "I understand." Agent Castellanos examined my forged documents with professional appreciation. "These are remarkably convincing. You've replicated security features that most criminals wouldn't even think to include." The fake papers showed Harold liquidating his retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and real estate holdings. Total value $2.7 million. All funds supposedly being transferred to a new account under my name for estate planning purposes. "Your grandfather is in position at his house," Agent Castellanos continued. "He'll make the staged phone calls starting in 30 minutes. We have surveillance teams watching Brian's known associates and undercover agents positioned at every bank in the city." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Marcus, this is Sarah. I heard about your banking problems from Brian. Can we meet for coffee? I might be able to help." Agent Castellanos read the message over my shoulder. "She's moving fast. That's good. Means they're taking the bait." Should I respond? "Yes, but we're going to modify the plan. Instead of waiting for them to approach you, we'll use this meeting to feed them information directly." 2 hours later, I sat across from Sarah in a busy downtown coffee shop, wearing a hidden recording device and trying to appear relaxed. Sarah looked exactly as she had at family gatherings: friendly, attractive, completely trustworthy. Knowing she was a professional criminal made every smile feel sinister. "Marcus, I'm so sorry to hear about what happened with your grandfather's money," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Brian told me someone stole almost $500,000 from you." "It's been devastating," I replied, following the script Agent Castellanos had provided. "But actually, Grandpa is trying to help me recover financially. He's liquidating some of his assets to give me a fresh start." Sarah's eyes sharpened slightly. "That's incredibly generous of him. He inherited almost $3 million from his brother Eugene. He's planning to transfer most of it to me for safekeeping, while we figure out how to protect it from whoever's been stealing from our family." "Wow, when is this transfer supposed to happen?" "This afternoon, $2.7 million. He's worried that keeping it in his own accounts makes him a target for the same criminals who stole from me." Sarah nodded sympathetically, but I caught her glancing at her phone screen twice during our conversation. She was almost certainly communicating with her criminal associates. "Marcus, can I give you some advice? As someone who works in financial services." "Of course." "Large transfers like that often attract attention from federal investigators. Money laundering concerns tax implications, that kind of thing. You might want to consider structuring the transfer differently, maybe through multiple smaller transactions or offshore accounts." My blood ran cold. Sarah was essentially coaching me on how to hide money from law enforcement. She was trying to help me become a criminal. "That's a good point," I said carefully. "Do you know anyone who specializes in that kind of financial planning?" "Actually, yes. I have a friend who helps families with complex estate transfers. Very discreet, very professional. He might be able to structure this in a way that protects your grandfather's privacy. Could you set up a meeting? I'll make some calls and get back to you within an hour." After Sarah left, I sat in the coffee shop feeling like I might throw up. The recording device felt heavy against my chest. Agent Castellanos' voice came through my hidden earpiece. "Excellent work, Mr. Patterson. She's walking directly into our trap." 45 minutes later, Sarah called back with meeting instructions. A financial consultant named Michael Romano would meet me at a downtown office building at 4 o'clock to discuss Harold's transfer. The name Romano wasn't a coincidence. "This is Vincent Romano's son," Agent Castellanos explained as we drove to the meeting location. 28 years old MBA from Ohio State officially works as an investment advisor. Unofficially, he helps his father's criminal organization legitimize stolen money. The office building looked legitimate and professional. Michael Romano's office occupied the 15th floor with a view of the Scioto River. He appeared exactly like what Central Casting would order for a young investment banker, expensive suit, confident handshake, wall covered with financial credentials. "Mr. Patterson, Sarah explained your grandfather's situation. Estate planning for elderly clients is one of my specialties." I repeated the story about Harold's inheritance and planned transfer. Michael listened intently, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "The challenge with transfers this large is avoiding unnecessary government attention," he said. "The IRS flags anything over $10,000. Banks are required to report suspicious activity. Your grandfather could face significant tax penalties if this isn't handled properly. What do you recommend?" "I can structure this as a series of legitimate investment transactions. Your grandfather transfers the funds to my firm as an investment client. I then allocate those investments to accounts under your name. Completely legal, minimal tax implications, and protected from the criminals who've been targeting your family." Michael's presentation was polished and convincing. If I hadn't known he was a criminal, I might have believed his story about legitimate investment services. "There is one small administrative fee for handling transactions of this size," he continued, "typically around 8% of the total transfer amount. In this case, approximately $216,000, 8%. They were planning to steal over $200,000 in fees on top of whatever else they could extract from Harold's accounts. "That seems reasonable," I said. "When could we begin the process?" "Today, if your grandfather is available. Time is essential with situations like this. The longer his money sits in standard accounts, the more vulnerable it becomes." Michael provided detailed instructions for Harold to begin liquidating his assets. Wire transfer information for the initial deposit, account numbers for the follow-up transactions, everything needed to steal every penny of Harold's inheritance. As I left Michael's office, my phone rang. Harold's name appeared on the caller ID. "Marcus, something's wrong. I just got a call from someone claiming to be a federal agent. They said my accounts have been frozen as part of a money laundering investigation." My heart stopped. "What?" "The man said I need to transfer my money immediately to avoid federal seizure. He gave me account numbers and routing information. He's calling back in 20 minutes for my authorization." "Grandpa don't authorize anything. That's not a real federal agent." "How do you know?" "Because the real federal agents are standing next to me right now." Agent Castellanos grabbed my phone. "Mr. Patterson, this is Special Agent Castellanos with the FBI. Do not under any circumstances authorize any money transfers. We believe Vincent Romano's people are trying to steal your assets immediately rather than wait for the staged operation." "They know about the sting?" Harold asked. "It appears so. We need to abort this operation and get you to safety immediately." Through Michael Romano's office window, I watched a black sedan pull up to the curb 15 floors below. 3 men in dark clothing got out and headed toward the building entrance. "Agent Castellanos," I said quietly, "I think we have a problem." She followed my gaze and immediately spoke into her radio. "All units, we have hostile movement at the target location. Repeat, hostile movement." Michael Romano appeared in his office doorway, no longer looking like a friendly investment advisor. His expression was cold and threatening. "Mr. Patterson, I'm afraid our business arrangement has become more complicated than anticipated." Behind him stood 2 large men I didn't recognize. The elevator doors at the end of the hallway opened, revealing the 3 men from the black sedan. Agent Castellanos drew her weapon. "FBI, everyone on the ground." The next 60 seconds erupted into chaos. Shouting voices, running footsteps, the sharp crack of gunfire. Agent Castellanos pushed me behind Michael's desk as federal agents stormed the hallway from both directions. When the shooting stopped, Michael Romano lay handcuffed on his office floor, blood trickling from a wound on his forehead. Two of his associates were unconscious. The third man had surrendered without resistance. "Is Harold safe?" I asked Agent Castellanos. "Secure at a federal facility. Vincent Romano and his remaining associates are in custody. We've recovered account information that should help us trace most of the stolen funds." I sat in Michael Romano's expensive office chair, surrounded by shattered glass and overturned furniture, trying to process what had just happened. 3 years of systematic theft, $500,000 stolen from me personally, a criminal organization that had destroyed dozens of families, and my cousin Brian, who had betrayed everyone who trusted him. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we start the long process of putting these criminals in prison and recovering every dollar they stole." Agent Castellanos helped me to my feet as paramedics attended to the wounded criminals. "Mr. Patterson, what you did today was incredibly brave. You've helped us shut down one of the most sophisticated financial fraud operations we've ever encountered." As federal agents escorted me toward the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text message from Brian. "Marcus, I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted it to go this far. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Too little too late." But justice was finally within reach. 3 days after the downtown office raid, Agent Castellanos called with urgent news. Brian had contacted the FBI through his attorney, offering to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for reduced charges. He claimed to have information that could lead to the recovery of all stolen funds and the capture of Vincent Romano's remaining associates. Harold and I met with federal prosecutors at the U.S. Attorney's Office downtown. The conference room felt sterile and official, with flags flanking a mahogany table and law books lining the walls. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, a sharp woman in her 50s, reviewed the case files with methodical precision. "Your cousin's cooperation could be valuable," she explained, "but we need to verify his claims independently. He's facing federal charges for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. His only leverage is the information he can provide." Brian entered the conference room accompanied by his defense attorney, looking nothing like the confident loan officer I had known my entire life. He appeared exhausted, hollow-eyed, wearing an orange jail jumpsuit and handcuffs. When our eyes met across the table, he immediately looked away. "Brian," Harold said quietly, his voice carrying decades of disappointment. "Uncle Harold." "I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt our family." "Then why did you do it?" I asked. Brian's story emerged slowly, punctuated by long pauses and obvious internal struggle. Vincent Romano had approached him 18 months ago at a banking conference in Cincinnati. Romano presented himself as a successful investment advisor, looking for banking professionals to help with legitimate estate planning services. "At first, it really was legitimate," Brian insisted. "I helped elderly clients structure their assets to minimize tax implications. The money I earned was completely legal." "When did that change?" Attorney Walsh asked. "About a year ago, Romano showed me how much more profitable it could be if we accessed client funds directly instead of just earning fees for advice. He said it wasn't really stealing because we were providing valuable financial services." The rationalization was pathetic, but Brian seemed to genuinely believe it at the time. Romano had gradually drawn him deeper into the criminal organization, using a combination of financial incentives and psychological manipulation. "He made it seem like everyone in the financial industry operated this way," Brian continued. "Like I was naive for thinking the rules actually mattered. He said clients were better off having professionals manage their money rather than leaving it in basic savings accounts." "What about Marcus specifically?" Agent Castellanos asked. "Why target your own cousin?" Brian's composure finally cracked. "Romano found out about Uncle Harold's inheritance from Eugene. He said our family was a perfect test case because we trusted each other completely. Marcus would never suspect me of stealing from him. For 3 years, I demanded. You stole from me for 3 years and watched me struggle financially. I told myself it was temporary, that I would pay everything back once the legitimate investment business took off. I kept detailed records of everything I took, planning to return it all with interest. Harold leaned forward. Show us those records. Brian's attorney produced a thick folder filled with handwritten ledgers. Every theft was meticulously documented, dates, amounts, sources. The total came to $37,412 over 36 months. What about the $500,000 from Harold's wire transfer? Attorney Walsh asked. That was Romano's decision. When Uncle Harold sent that money, Romano said it was our chance to score big enough to retire from the family targeting business. I tried to argue that it was too obvious, but he threatened to expose my previous involvement if I didn't cooperate. Agent Castellanos studied Brian intently. You're claiming you were coerced into the larger theft. Once Romano had evidence of the smaller thefts, I was trapped. He said if I ever tried to leave the organization or expose their operations, he would frame me for all the crimes they'd committed over the past 5 years. Where are Romano's financial records? Attorney Walsh demanded. Hidden in a storage unit in Hilliard, unit number 47 at Secure Space Storage on Cemetery Road. Romano keeps detailed files on every victim, every theft, every criminal associate. Agent Castellanos made notes. What else can you tell us about Romano's operations? He's planning to disappear completely. New identity offshore accounts probably leaving the country within the week. All the stolen money has been converted to cryptocurrency and precious metals to make it untraceable. Where is he now? Warehouse complex on the south side. Industrial district near the airport. He's using it as a base while they prepare to liquidate everything and run. Attorney Walsh looked skeptical. Brian, if you're lying about any of this information, your cooperation agreement becomes worthless. You'll face the maximum sentence on all charges. I'm telling the truth. I have proof. Brian's attorney handed over a smartphone. My client recorded several conversations with Romano and his associates. He was planning to use these recordings to protect himself if the situation escalated. Agent Castellanos connected the phone to a portable speaker. Romano's voice filled the conference room, discussing plans to eliminate potential witnesses and liquidate remaining assets before federal heat gets too intense. One recording made my blood freeze. The grandfather and his grandson have become liabilities. Once we extract the remaining $2.7 million, we deal with them permanently. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Harold's face went pale. They were planning to kill us. Romano doesn't leave loose ends, Brian said quietly. I recorded that conversation because I realized I might be next on his list. Once the family targets were eliminated, I would be the only witness who could connect him to the thefts. Agent Castellanos stood up. We need to move on that warehouse immediately. If Romano is planning to flee, we're running out of time. There's something else, Brian added. Romano has been monitoring Uncle Harold's house with surveillance equipment. He knows about the federal protection detail. He's planning to strike tonight when the security shifts change at 11 p.m. The conference room erupted into urgent activity. Agent Castellanos coordinated with tactical units while Attorney Walsh prepared arrest warrants. Harold and I were assigned additional security protection. Brian, I said, as federal agents prepared to escort him back to his cell. Why are you helping us now? Why not just keep quiet and hope for a lighter sentence? He looked directly at me for the first time since entering the room. Because Romano was right about one thing. Family should take care of family. I failed you for 3 years, but I won't fail you when your life is in danger. Do you really think we can trust him? Harold asked as Brian was led away. We're about to find out, Agent Castellanos replied, because if his information is wrong, we're walking into a trap that could get us all killed. That evening, as federal agents prepared to raid Romano's warehouse complex, I sat in a safe house with Harold, wondering if Brian's cooperation would be enough to end this nightmare, or if it would just make everything more dangerous. Tomorrow we would either have our money back and our lives back to normal, or we would discover just how far Vincent Romano was willing to go to protect his criminal empire. The raid on Vincent Romano's warehouse began at 5:37 a.m. with 50 federal agents surrounding the industrial complex. Harold and I watched from a command vehicle parked 2 blocks away monitoring radio communications as tactical teams moved into position. Agent Castellanos wore full tactical gear, her voice crisp and professional over the radio system. All units in position. Suspect vehicles confirmed on site. Proceeding with entry in 3-2-1. The warehouse erupted into controlled chaos. Shouted commands, flashbang grenades, tactical teams coordinating through multiple entry points. Within 6 minutes, the radio crackled with confirmation: Romano in custody. 4 associates detained, warehouse secure. Harold gripped my arm as we listened to the tactical report. Computers, filing cabinets, and financial records seized. No shots fired, no injuries reported. Vincent Romano had surrendered without resistance when faced with overwhelming federal force. 2 hours later, Agent Castellanos returned to the command vehicle carrying evidence boxes and wearing a satisfied expression. "Gentlemen, we've recovered everything," she announced. Romano kept meticulous records of every theft, every victim, every transaction. We have complete financial documentation going back 5 years. She opened one of the evidence boxes, revealing neat rows of file folders labeled with names and dates. 43 victims across 6 states. Total theft amount $11.8 million. Your $500,000, Mr. Patterson, represents just 4% of their criminal profits. Can the money be recovered? Harold asked. Romano was surprisingly cooperative once he realized the extent of our evidence. He provided account numbers and passwords for offshore holdings, cryptocurrency wallets, and physical assets. We should be able to recover approximately 85% of the stolen funds. I felt lightheaded with relief. What about the other victims? Federal prosecutors in Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kentucky are coordinating a massive restitution effort. Most victims should receive substantial compensation within 6 months. Agent Castellanos pulled out additional documents. Mr. Patterson, there's something else you should know. Romano's organization targeted your family specifically because of intelligence they gathered about your grandfather's inheritance. Someone provided them with detailed information about your family's financial situation. Brian, I asked. Initially, yes. But Romano had another source within your extended family. Someone who's been feeding him information for over 2 years. Harold and I exchanged glances. Who? Your Uncle Robert, Brian's father. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Uncle Robert, Harold's son-in-law, had been working with the criminals who stole from his own family. He had provided information that led to my financial devastation and nearly gotten Harold and me killed. Robert approached Romano independently, Agent Castellanos explained. He was facing financial difficulties after his construction business failed. Romano offered him substantial payments for information about wealthy family members and their financial activities. How much did Robert receive? Harold asked quietly. Approximately $120,000 over 24 months. He provided Romano with details about family gatherings, financial discussions, inheritance plans, and personal information about potential targets. I thought about every family dinner, every holiday celebration, every casual conversation about money or business. Uncle Robert had been present for all of it, listening carefully and reporting back to criminals. Where is Robert now? Harold asked. In federal custody. He's facing charges for conspiracy wire fraud and providing material support to a criminal enterprise. The next several hours blurred together in a sequence of legal proceedings, paperwork, and detailed statements. Federal prosecutors outlined the criminal case against Romano's organization. Financial recovery specialists explained the process for retrieving stolen assets. Victim services coordinators provided information about counseling and support resources. By late afternoon, Harold and I sat in Attorney Walsh's office reviewing the preliminary recovery estimate. $437,800 from my intercepted inheritance, $31,600 from 3 years of systematic theft. Additional compensation from federal victim restitution funds. The total recovery should exceed your actual losses, Attorney Walsh explained. Federal law allows for punitive damages in cases involving organized financial fraud. What about Brian's sentence? I asked. He'll receive credit for substantial cooperation, but he's still facing significant prison time. Probably 3 to 5 years in federal custody, followed by supervised probation and community service. Harold had remained quiet throughout most of the legal discussions. Finally, he spoke up. What happens to our family now? How do we rebuild trust after something like this? Attorney Walsh's expression softened. That's the hardest part of cases like this, Mr. Patterson. The financial recovery is relatively straightforward. The emotional recovery takes much longer. 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Official notification that Vincent Romano and 7 associates had pleaded guilty to federal racketeering charges. Prison sentences ranging from 8 to 25 years. Full financial restitution ordered for all victims. The recovered funds arrived in my bank account on a Tuesday morning in January. $563,412. More money than I had ever imagined possessing. Harold and I met for lunch that day at his favorite restaurant, a family-owned Italian place, where we had celebrated birthdays and graduations for decades. He looked older than his 73 years, the stress of the past months having taken a visible toll. Marcus, I want to apologize for bringing this nightmare into your life, he said, over plates of pasta and breadsticks. If I hadn't given you that inheritance money, none of this would have happened. Grandpa, you did nothing wrong. You tried to help me, and criminals took advantage of your generosity. That's not your fault. I trusted the wrong people, Robert Bryan people I thought I knew better than anyone. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. You trusted your family. That's what families are supposed to do. The fact that some people betrayed that trust doesn't make you naive or foolish. Harold smiled for the first time in weeks. What are you going to do with the money? I had been thinking about that question constantly since learning about the recovery amount. $500,000 could change my life completely. Buy a house, start a real business, travel the world, live comfortably for years. I'm going to use it to help other families, I said. Start a nonprofit organization that educates people about financial fraud and helps victims recover from these kinds of crimes. Harold's eyes lit up. That's a wonderful idea. I want to call it Family Shield Financial. Use my graphic design experience to create educational materials, websites, presentations for community groups. Help people recognize the warning signs of financial fraud before they become victims. Can I help? I was hoping you'd ask. Your insurance background and investigative experience would be invaluable. Over the next hour, we outlined plans for the nonprofit organization. Educational seminars for elderly communities. Resources for families dealing with financial fraud. Advocacy for stronger consumer protection laws. Marcus, I'm proud of how you've handled this situation, Harold said as we prepared to leave the restaurant. You could have been bitter and angry after everything that happened. Instead, you're choosing to help other people avoid the same pain. I learned that from you, Grandpa. You always taught me that the right response to injustice is to fight for justice, not just for yourself, but for everyone. As we walked to our cars in the restaurant parking lot, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: optimism about the future. The money was important, but more important was the sense of purpose I had discovered through surviving this ordeal. Vincent Romano and his criminal organization were in prison. The stolen money had been recovered and returned. My family relationships were damaged but beginning to heal. And I had found my calling in life protecting other families from the kind of betrayal and financial devastation we had endured. Justice had been served. Now it was time to make sure it never happened again. 6 months later, I stood before a packed auditorium at the Columbus Senior Center delivering my presentation on financial fraud protection to an audience of 87 elderly community members. The PowerPoint slides I had designed were clear and informative, covering everything from identity theft warning signs to safe online banking practices. Harold sat in the front row, wearing a navy blue polo shirt with the Family Shield Financial logo embroidered on the chest. At 74, he had thrown himself into our nonprofit work with the same methodical dedication he had once applied to insurance investigations. Remember, I told the audience, criminals who target families rely on trust and emotional manipulation. They're looking for people who believe that family members would never steal from them. Unfortunately, approximately 30% of financial elder abuse is committed by relatives. An elderly woman in the third row raised her hand. What should we do if we suspect a family member is stealing from us? No. Document everything, contact your bank immediately, and report the situation to Adult Protective Services. Don't confront the suspected family member directly until you have professional support and legal guidance. After the presentation, Harold and I packed up our materials and headed to our next appointment. Family Shield Financial had grown rapidly over the past 6 months, conducting educational seminars throughout Central Ohio and providing direct assistance to fraud victims. The nonprofit operated from a small office in downtown Columbus, staffed by 3 full-time employees and 6 volunteers. We had helped 17 families recover stolen assets and prevented an estimated $400,000 in attempted fraud through our educational programs. Marcus, there's something I want to discuss with you, Harold said as we drove to our office. What's on your mind? I've been thinking about retirement, real retirement this time. I want to travel, spend time with friends, maybe learn to play golf. I felt a pang of concern. Are you saying you want to step back from Family Shield Financial? Not step back. Transition my responsibilities to you gradually. You've built something remarkable here, and you don't need an old man slowing you down. Grandpa, you're not slowing anything down. You're the reason this organization exists. No, Marcus. You're the reason it exists. I just provided the initial funding and some investigative experience. The vision, the passion, the leadership, that's all you. We parked outside our office building, but neither of us moved to get out of the car. Harold turned to face me directly. I need to tell you something important. The past 6 months working with you to build this organization have been among the most fulfilling of my entire life. Not because of the work itself, although that's meaningful, but because of watching you discover your purpose and grow into the man you were meant to become. I felt my throat tighten with emotion. Grandpa, let me finish. When Vincent Romano's people were threatening our lives, when our own family members were betraying us, I watched you respond with courage, integrity, and determination to fight for justice. Not just for yourself, but for strangers you had never met. That's who you are, Marcus. That's the man your grandmother and I raised you to become. Harold reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Inside the envelope was a check for $50,000 and a handwritten note for the Marcus Patterson Scholarship Fund, helping young fraud victims rebuild their financial lives and pursue their dreams. Harold, I can't accept this. It's not for you personally. It's for the scholarship program you mentioned last month. Use it to help other young people who've had their financial futures stolen by criminals. I stared at the check, overwhelmed by Harold's continued generosity and faith in our mission. There's something else, Harold continued. I've been in contact with federal prosecutors about Brian's situation. Brian had been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison with eligibility for supervised release after 30 months. He had written several letters to both Harold and me expressing remorse and asking for forgiveness. What did the prosecutor say? Brian has been providing ongoing assistance with related financial fraud cases. He's helped federal investigators identify and prosecute 3 other criminal organizations. His cooperation has led to the recovery of over $2 million for additional victims. That's good news for the other victims. Marcus, I think Brian deserves a chance at redemption. When he's released from prison, I'd like to offer him a position with Family Shield Financial. I considered Harold's suggestion carefully. Brian's betrayal had caused tremendous pain and financial hardship, but his cooperation had also helped bring justice to dozens of other victims and prevented future crimes. What kind of position? Community education specialist. Someone who can speak honestly about the psychology of financial fraud from the perspective of someone who participated in it. Show people how criminals think, how they target victims, how they manipulate trust and relationships. You think audiences would trust someone who committed these crimes? I think audiences would benefit from hearing the truth about how these schemes operate. Brian understands the criminal mindset better than any of us. He could help prevent other people from becoming victims or perpetrators. That afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing funding applications and thinking about Harold's proposal. Family Shield Financial had grown beyond my wildest expectations, but it was still small compared to the scope of financial fraud affecting American families. My assistant knocked on the door and entered carrying a large manila envelope. "This just arrived by courier," she said, "from the FBI Victim Services Division." Inside the envelope were thank you letters from 43 families whose lives had been destroyed by Vincent Romano's criminal organization. Elderly couples who had lost their retirement savings. Young parents who had been financially devastated while struggling to pay medical bills. Families who had discovered that trusted relatives were stealing from them. One letter particularly moved me, written by Mrs. Eleanor Watson, an 86-year-old widow from Toledo. "Dear Mr. Patterson, I wanted to thank you for the courage you showed in exposing the criminals who stole my late husband's life insurance money. Because of your investigation, I was able to recover $68,000 that I thought was lost forever. More importantly, you helped me understand that I was not foolish or naive for trusting my nephew. These criminals are sophisticated predators who specialize in exploiting family relationships. Your educational materials have helped me protect myself and warn other seniors in my community. You turned a terrible experience into something positive that helps other people avoid the same pain." I read Mrs. Watson's letter 3 times, feeling the weight of responsibility and the satisfaction of meaningful purpose. This was why Family Shield Financial existed. This was why the pain and betrayal of the past year had been worthwhile. My phone rang. Amanda Richardson's name appeared on the caller ID. Amanda worked as a social worker with the County Adult Protective Services Department, and we had collaborated on several fraud cases over the past few months. She was also the woman I'd been dating for the past 3 months. "Marcus, I have great news," she said. "The state legislature just passed the Family Financial Protection Act. It includes funding for nonprofit organizations that provide fraud education and victim services." "How much funding?" $2.3 million annually, distributed through competitive grants to qualifying organizations. I felt my heart racing. That level of funding could allow Family Shield Financial to expand statewide, hire additional staff, and reach thousands more potential victims. "Amanda, this is incredible news. There's something else. The legislation specifically mentions your organization as a model for the kind of community-based fraud prevention the state wants to support." After Amanda hung up, I sat in my office chair staring out the window at downtown Columbus. 18 months ago, I had been struggling to pay rent on a small apartment, working as a freelance graphic designer and barely making ends meet while criminals systematically stole my income. Now I was running a nonprofit organization that was making a real difference in people's lives. I had recovered not just my own stolen money, but helped dozens of other families do the same. I had found meaningful work, a loving relationship, and a sense of purpose that filled every day with satisfaction. The financial theft had been devastating at the time, but it had led me to discover my true calling in life. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the foundation for the best things we build from the wreckage. Harold was right about family taking care of family. But I had learned that family extends beyond blood relationships. Family includes everyone who chooses to stand with you when life becomes difficult, who fights alongside you for justice and healing, who believes in your potential even when you doubt yourself. Vincent Romano and his criminal organization had tried to destroy my family through financial betrayal and manipulation. Instead, they had taught me the true meaning of family loyalty, community responsibility, and fighting for justice. My phone buzzed with a text message from Harold. Just booked my first golf lesson for next week. Figured it's time this old investigator learned to chase something besides criminals. Proud of you, Marcus. See you at dinner Sunday. I smiled, thinking about how dramatically our lives had changed since that shocking Thanksgiving dinner conversation. Harold deserved his peaceful retirement after everything he had endured. And I was ready to carry forward the mission we had built together. The deepest life lesson I had learned was this: when life tests your character through betrayal, loss, and injustice, you have a choice. You can become bitter and retreat from the world, or you can choose to fight back in a way that prevents other people from experiencing the same pain. The greatest gift isn't money or comfort or security. It's the strength to transform your own suffering into service that protects and empowers other people. Family Shield Financial would continue growing, reaching more communities, and helping more victims. Brian would eventually have his chance at redemption through honest work and community service. Harold would enjoy his retirement, knowing that his grandson had found meaningful purpose. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure that no other family would have to endure the betrayal and financial devastation that had nearly destroyed us. Justice served, mission discovered, purpose fulfilled. Life doesn't always give us what we want, but sometimes it gives us exactly what we need to become who we're meant to be. I hope this story resonates with your own experiences and reminds you that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to choose how we respond to injustice. Have you ever faced a situation where someone you trusted betrayed that trust? How did you find the strength to move forward and rebuild? I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable about protecting yourself and your loved ones from financial fraud, please give it a like and share it with family and friends who might benefit from these important lessons. Your support helps us continue creating content that makes a real difference in people's lives. Don't forget to subscribe to stay connected with more stories about courage, justice, and the power of fighting back when life tests your character. Together, we can build a community of people committed to protecting each other and standing up for what's right. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, no matter how dark the situation might seem, there's always a way to turn your pain into purpose and your struggle into strength for others. Until next time, stay strong, stay vigilant, and never stop fighting for justice.